If you haven't been following the Linux journey, first, welcome. I make videos about open source hardware and software. And my last video was about converting my main gaming and workstation from Windows 11 over to Linux. And now it's time for the arcade machine. So there are 3 goals I want to accomplish on switching the arcade machine from Windows 10 over to Linux. The first main goal is getting rid of Windows. And as for goal number 2, was to switch from a traditional joystick to a full button layout. I'll explain a little bit more later. Goal number 3 was to make a seamless startup experience so that it booted more like an appliance rather than a desktop computer. So for picking the OS, there are a ton of Linux distros out there, but I narrowed it down to 3. The first one being Nobara OS. I tried Nobara because I installed it on my main PC and I just used the same flash drive and imaged it on the arcade machine. And Nobara actually worked really well. Of course, it's a gaming distro, but it didn't work seamlessly with Steam Remote Play for some reason. I don't know if it was something I did, but I eventually moved on to a different distro, and that was Pop! OS. Pop! OS is another very lightweight distro designed for gamers. But the issue I ran into with Pop! OS was not being able to get the firmware quite right with the Brookboard that's in here that converts the buttons into PC input. So I went back to old reliable Ubuntu. Alright, so let's go over why I modified the panel and got rid of the joystick. It was actually because of this controller that I found from a seller on Etsy. Not to get too sidetracked, but it's an open source project with the chip that goes in the Raspberry Pi Pico, where people actually turn them into fight sticks. And this seller made a really dope custom board with the Pico chip, as well as keyboard switches and a 3D printed shell. I actually made a whole video about it. I'll put it down below. So most people refer to the full button layout as a leverless controller, meaning it has no joystick. Also, people refer to it as Hitbox, which is a popular brand, so it sort of gets that Kleenex effect. This layout was popularized by the fighting game community, giving them more precise and reliable inputs than a joystick. But you may be asking, why would a scrub like me care so much about precise inputs and getting that minimal edge? You're right, I don't care. But what I do care about are my boomer gamer hands and how much more comfortable this is than a controller or a joystick. So I went ahead and got a 30mm drill bit and drilled my left, right, and up buttons. Next, I had to get a Hitbox adapter that attaches to that Brookboard that I mentioned earlier and converts that joystick connector into 4-button directional input. And to get Ubuntu to recognize that Brookboard as a controller that it can use, I switched the Brookboard from being detected as an Xbox One controller over to a PS5 controller. Of course, Xbox controllers work great with Windows, but that same relationship exists with PlayStation and Linux. So after getting all the buttons installed and everything mapped out, it was time to start the automation process. For starting up Steam on boot, not a difficult process, you probably already know how to do it. I set mine to big picture mode, so whenever the machine boots up, it goes to full screen big picture mode. But this PC arcade machine is actually a dual monitor setup. This little monitor down here is actually connected to the motherboard also. This one is running on a Raspberry Pi, it's just a touch screen. So mainly I just open up a web browser, pull it down, and open up YouTube on it. Not super difficult, but it does take a little bit of extra time, and that time adds up, and that time is valuable. So to save me those several clicks in typing, I came up with a new automation process. And an open source app that I used to help me with that is called Nativefire. Nativefire is designed to take a web page and turn it into a desktop-like application using Electron. It uses Chromium to make an executable, and it runs just like a native app. It doesn't have all the borders and everything that a normal web page would have. So having that little executable just makes it a little bit more cleaner and streamlined. You don't have to worry about all the other browser stuff getting in the way. So in practice, on boot, I press the power button, Ubuntu loads up, my little screen gets populated with YouTube Studio, and then a few seconds later, Steam takes a little while to boot up. Steam starts big picture mode, and now it's ready. It's like an appliance. But now that I've got everything sorted out, I'm gonna have a little bit more time to play games. So subscribe if you wanna see some of the live streams. Right now I'm playing mostly Street Fighter 6. Like I said, I'm trying to get better at fighting games. But if you wanna catch up on the Linux journey or continue it from here, I made this little playlist. Peace.